Hello, so now we are gonna go check all of the structure of the project so that you know how everything works. WWise project handles everything sound related on your game, and you first have to define your audio buses. The audio bus is like a highway where the cars go, and you can divide it on lanes. In this case, these are the regular buses: HDR, music, user interface, and voice, which I believe is the microphone voice because the player characters are somewhere else. HDR is high dynamic range, which is a way to handle sound, especially sound that goes on your 3D space if you want to make it sound more realistic. I disable it actually because HDR generally lowers the volume of some sounds to make room for other more important sounds, and well, it does so automatically, and basically I didn't like it that much. I wanted to fine-tune it to my own liking. Maybe you won't like my settings. In any case, you can always just enable it or fine-tune the settings yourself on your own way. HDR got the environment, environmental effects, player character, that means the player voices, weapons, your own weapons, the echo of the weapons, and third-person weapons, the weapons of your teammates, basically. And also sets, their impacts and their grab effects. Now, like I said, I disable HDR on the HDR bus, which sounds weird, but well, I did. It also got, for example, depending on the global game state where you are on the lobby, the menu, or your post, it drops the bus volume by 96 decibels, which basically just mutes it. RTPC, you can set anything you want. In this case, I set the volume bus to lower depending on the grenade effects, because the grenade effect sound is very loud and the ringing noise just hurts my ears, so I lower the bus the volume. The stronger the ringing is, the lower the volume, so basically I just don't want to listen to it very loudly. Positioning is something that I believe you do mostly in-game, but you can enable 2D positioning in case you want it to be centered or not. I use that on music, not here. For effects, you can set all of these effects that will modify how this bus sounds. I believe I got an effect on the master audio bus, yeah. The peak limiter. Basically, your speakers got a maximum volume they can play without issues, without making artifacts, noise artifacts. And this is the 0 decibel here, this line. If your volume crosses this line, then it is very likely to has noise instead of the regular sound. And the peak limiter tries to avoid this by limiting the sound so that it doesn't break this line. Now with my settings, it usually breaks it at 0.5, but apparently my own speakers are good enough that they can play that sound. I don't know if they can play it on your computer. If your computer is low quality, maybe it won't play it, but you can just lower this peak, even make the peak even lower, or perhaps lower the volume here, so that all of your lanes or all of your buses have lower volume in general, so that it never crosses 0.5. Now for the positioning. The music is supposed to be somewhat mono, so I didn't. Music active. Well, I do recall setting it to center on 2D. like this, so that it sounds inside your head. But maybe I set it here, or maybe I just save. Oh, it's here. Okay, well, I should have, this is the music here. I should have just set the bus in this case, for example, to center, because all of these sounds will play on this bus, on this muse bus, so they would all inherit this. But well, I did it individually. That's some sort of mistake, I guess. Not exactly a mistake, but it is better organized if I put the center here. In any case, you got the music active, which is the wave music, music ambient, which is the trader music, the lobby music, music menu, which is the main menu music before you enter any game, the stingers, which are the flesh pound riffs, the scrake spawn riffs. We got the user interface bus, which handles all the button sounds, and also whenever a weapon spawns, whenever your armor spawns, also I believe the grenade FX also plays here. Yeah, it also plays here because I changed the volume based on how strong the FX is. Okay, I think I explained this wrong. Here you get the grenade effects, okay? And at the beginning, of course, the ringing is very loud, and I just lower the volume a bit because I don't want the peak to be so strong. But I do want some ringing so that I feel, let's say, immersed in the game. But I drop the volume very quickly to a very low volume because I don't want the ringing to stay, because it does harm my ears. Then naturally this ringing lowers. So if we had a curve for the actual ringing of the grenade, the grenade would start like this, very loud, but it drops in time. So imagine this curve multiplied by this volume modifier, and we would have something like it starts a bit lower, then it drops. I believe I can add another button by double clicking. Yeah, then it drops. And then the volume modifier stays constant, so this stays constant, and this would be stronger because it is a drop plus another curve that is dropping. And then at this point the volume increases, but increases to normal. Yeah, so this would start lower, it will be lower here, and then another point, and then the volume increases to normal, but normal is 0, so it only means that it will drop slower, a bit more slowly, perhaps like this, or I don't know, something like this maybe. In any case, from the normal, which was like this, I have dropped the total volume. As the grenade explodes, all of the wall sounds, I mute them because you are left deaf from the explosion. And then as time goes, you start regaining your hearing, and then you get to normal at the end of the grenade ringing. Now this is for the buses. Whatever you change here will affect if you change anything on a root bus, it will affect all of the inner buses, and affecting any bus will affect any sound that plays on that bus. And for example, they do add up. So for example, if you got here environment with maximum volume, HDR with maximum volume, and the master with maximum volume, then you don't get just plus 12 volume, you get plus 36 volume. Okay, so you have to make sure that your settings don't start adding to infinity. You just make the change wherever it is absolutely required. After you got the buses, you can define either events or define your sounds. We will define our sounds first. Here you can create work units which are a way to organize your work. They don't actually do anything, they just are like a folder but logical. And on actor mixer you will want to create sounds that are played by your game entities. Like for example, here we got a weapon. On the interactive music you create your sounds that are more music than anything. Here we got the music active, the ambient, and the menu. Now for the wave music, the developers created a single item, a single object for every single song in the game. But well, they created their playlists in their code, but WYs can have playlists inside the project. You don't need to use your code to create the playlists. So instead of doing the same as they did, I just created a music switch, which is this. And inside the switch I created a playlist. I created a playlist for every map and a generic playlist that is supposed to play on every map. Now to check this, the name here is just the name of one of the older playlists that the developers used. I just kept it in case the name was called, but you only need to create the event. Actually, you only need to keep the name of the event so that the code can call the event and the event will call this song to play. Now to check how this switch works, we change layout to interactive, and here we can see the condition of the switch. The switch will switch based on this value, which is called level. It can be biotics, minor, outpost, Paris, or none of them, or not of them. Based on the value, it will play one or perhaps many of the playlists. In this case, we got biotics. We'll play biotics lab playlist, minor, outpost, Paris. And asterisk will play generic. Asterisk means any of the values. That includes none, of course. So if you are on biotics, it will play biotics and it will play asterisk. And because we are on mode weighted here, it will grab both possibilities and use their weight to roll a dice and decide which of the playlists will be played. If you are on non-level, it will only match this asterisk, so it will only play generic. You can add more than one condition. For example, you can add here boss phase or global game state, but they are not added as an OR, they are added as an AND, so you would have to choose what playlist will be played when you are biotics, and phase 1, and in-game, and then choose the same but in login, and then in menu, then none, then post, and then the same for every single possible option in this list of stuff. Now to remove, I recall that you can click here and click remove, but it isn't working, so I'll just press delete. That also works. Here the weight is a plain weight, it is not a percentage. It will be a percentage if all the weights sum to 100. So for example here, if we had 30 plus 70, which is the other option, it sums to 100, so it will be 30% and 70%. But in this case I place it 25, so the percentage is a bit more than 25 because it only adds to 95. Now for the playlists. The playlists have a music segment as a child, but just because it has free childs here, it doesn't mean that the playlist will play anything at all. You need to drag these childs here. If they are in here, they will not play. Okay, they are already there, so I can add a second copy, but I don't need it. Now the playlist can have all of these settings. It could be sequential, it could be random. Sequential means that it will play the first song, then the second, then the third, while random will play randomly. And continuous means that it will, once you play the playlist, it will play all of the songs, while a step will only play the next song. It will play this one, then it will play this one, then it will play this one, whenever this playlist is ordered to play. Then random continuous does the same. Random step does a single song per step. The playlist itself can loop infinitely, and it can have this avoid repeat, which will work with the contents. But also the individual songs can loop a number of times. And if you are on random, it will have a weight. Since all three songs have the same weight, that means that each song has the same chance of playing. Now, if you recall, Biotics has only a 25 weight while Generic has 70. It is because the playlist only has 3 songs here while Generic has a ton. So I didn't want these 3 songs to be played all the time. I wanted it to be a bit more varied. So that's why the weights are different. Now it will work the same for every other map. So now we go to the next switch here, which is the switch for the boss. The switch for the boss chooses what song to play based on the boss phase. If the phase is first, it will play Abandon. Here, Abandon. If you are on the second phase, it will play Witness Prevention. On phase 3, it will play the same as phase 1, because if you see here, I have defined phase 3, but I don't have any song here. And on phase 4, it will play Abandon version 3, which is a faster version of Abandon. On top of the playlists, I got a segment, a single segment that is called Witness Transition. It does just that. It does a transition between 2 phases, in this case phase 2 and phase 3. Phase 2 is Witness Prevention, and the switch from Witness Prevention to Abandon is very harsh, so I just did a quick transition, I believe using phase 1, to make the jump to phase 1 a bit more smooth. It is not perfectly smooth, but I'm not a musician, I'm not a sound engineer. I just did something quickly too. I didn't use that much time. The transitions, for transitions you can go to the root and then find transitions, and you can choose a transition from what song to what other song and define how it will do it. In this case, for example, when we go from any song to phase 1, it will just jump immediately, and it will enter phase 1 from the entry queue, which is the green flag. And it will play from the blue arrow if the blue arrow is available. If we go from phase 1 to phase 2, it will not jump immediately, it will leave phase 1 at the next bar and with a fade out, and it will enter phase 2 as normal. From phase 2 to phase 3, which will play phase 1 again, it will do the same, but it will use the witness transition with a fade out. From phase 3, which plays phase 1, to phase 4, we will do a regular transition using the next bar. And from phase 4 to boss death, because the boss will be dead by now, we will end up playing phase 1 again. So we make the transition to jump, but we will not jump to the green flag of phase 1. We want to jump to the slow part, to the slow intro to Abandon, which is at the beginning with the blue arrow, but because the blue arrow already played here when we were at phase 1, and here the boss is already dead, then we are using a custom cue, which I call it game over, and we can see it here. Game over here, like this, and the cue is at the same spot. Well, no. Oh, I moved it, that means the blue arrow is somewhere else, but the blue arrow was here. Game over is at the same spot as the blue arrow at the beginning of the song on this slow intro. Now for the ambient music, the trader music, we change based on global game state first. We only care about two values, where we are on the trader, which is in game, and where we are on the lobby, on the ready screen, which should be in logging, but I found out that this global game state value isn't set all the time. Sometimes you got the value none, so I ended up using just none. I don't use in logging in the end. But if this ambient music is called to play, that means that we are in game or in the lobby, and then I use the global game state to decide on which one of those two we are to play either the trader music or the lobby music. Now both of them use the same idea as the wave music. We switch again, but this time based on the level, and we play the playlist for the level. I got the circus playlist, but I am not using it because I didn't find a appropriate map to use them on. But for example, you could just drag the segments to the correct places and set up the playlist to use them. Music menu is easier because it only got one song, so that's it. Now we got the songs loaded and created, but they are not being called by the game, so we need events for that. Events again go by music, active, ambient, and menu, and you need a play event, which is here. Forget about the second line, the basic is just play. Now because the developers got a playlist on their own code, they don't got it using wwise, they got a play for every single song, but I just make all of these events play the same object, which is the switch. All of them play the same. Besides playing, I also added this set state to make sure that the global game state is set to the correct value that we are in game, because we are playing wave music. And besides the play event, we need the stop event, because like I said, they are playing their playlist using code, so they play and they call to stop, and we stop the same object all the time because we aren't using a single playlist for every single song, a different playlist for every single song. Now for ambience, it works the same. We got to play for every single ambient music, and we got to stop. And for the menu, we play the menu, we stop the menu, but we set the state on the level to none, because if we are on the menu we are not playing any map. And we set the global game state to none because, like I said, the in logging setting doesn't work correctly, so I better use none. And same here. Now that we got events that are pointing to the playlists and we got the buses for them to play on, we create just sound banks. We create them with the same names that the developers use, and we just right click and generate sound banks for current platform, and we copy the files, and that should be it. But we also got this boss face value, and we got this level value that do not exist on the original game. I made them up here on game syncs. We can use switches which are called by code, so we can use what they got, but we can't create new stuff without access to the code. We got the states, which we can call and we can set using these events. So while we can't create new events, we can use the events that already exist to set the states to values we want. I created boss phase and level here. We got game parameters, which are like here grenade effects. They are the values that are again accessed by code and defined by code, but we can access the current value right now and modify how a bass sounds or how an effect is applied or whatever. And we got, for example, the set time modifier, which is how much time is left in on set time. The grenade effects. We got the flesh pound spinners, and we got the sliders on the music settings, on the audio settings of the game, the volume mastered, music, effects, and voice. And we got also that. For triggers, again, they are called by code, so basically we only got the states to work with if we don't want to access code. By not accessing code, we can just have all of these files be whitelisted automatically because they are supposed to not be changing anything important. But if you want to set these states, you need to recreate perhaps more sound banks than this. And well, I am only changing this, I'm only reverse engineering and recreating on this project only these sound banks, the music ones. So on the next video, I believe I'm gonna go how to do some hex editing to set these values on the correct places so that you can actually use these boss phase switches and the level switches, because otherwise you will always be using generic. But before we leave, we should check this mixer thing. With the mixer you can test these states before you actually go hex edit stuff that maybe won't work. So hi once more. I screwed up something on this switch and I had to reload the project again because the mixer wasn't gonna play anything. But well, this time we are setting it to in-game outpost, and after I recorded a second video I got a copyright claim on YouTube on this Jingle Bell sound. So I assumed all of the Tripwire songs should work for Killing Floor 1, but apparently not Jingle Bells, despite it should be very easy to just make a composition of your own. It seems that they licensed a composition by ME Music Publishing, or perhaps it's just Google being annoying, I don't know. But I just changed the weights on the playlist. So basically Jingle Bells got a very low weight. I'm just betting on getting this one song here. So let's see. Any day now. There, okay. Here you can change the sliders as if you were in game, changing the audio settings. Or or perhaps the set time modifier. You also got several other settings that come from in-game values, like the grenade effects, but the grenade effects doesn't affect music. It does affect the weapon sounds and stuff like that. One thing I was missing here, the grenade effects modify this, and it doesn't modify the other ones. And something I was missing is the auto ducking from the bosses. And just like you can fine-tune the boss volume, or you can use a peak limiter to fine-tune the maximum volume of the sum of every boss, or you can just play with the boss volume here using in-game values. You can also play with boss volume using auto ducking. In this case it works like this: whenever your weapon is shot on this boss, this boss will make a sound, will play it, and whenever anything plays on this boss, it will modify the music boss. It will lower its volume by 0.5 decibels using some fade out time, which in this case I made it very short. And once the weapon stops shooting, and as such this boss stops playing any sound at all, there is a fade-in where the music boss will recover its lost volume, always using this curve that you set here, and you can change the boss volume or the voice volume. But most bosses on Killing Floor 2 use bass volume, just that. After you set it to lower the volume of this bass, you can go to this bass and set the maximum ducking volume. In this case, you lower it by 0.5, and that is the maximum that can be lowered. So if you were to shoot your weapon while talking on the microphone, and as such lowering the volume of music by 0.3, the total volume lowered would be just 0.5, not 0.8. Now of course, if you stop shooting your weapon but you keep talking, then the music will only gain 0.2 decibels because you are still lowering it by 0.3. Now that would be it. You do this because you want to, in the case of the weapon, you want your weapon to sound very loud, your own weapon, and because the music is playing all the time and it is loud usually, then it will be hard for you to notice that you are shooting your weapon. You will think that the weapon sounds weak when it maybe is shooting loud but the music is louder. So by ducking the music, you make the weapon stand out more. So that would be it. We use the sound bank that has all the audio, has all the bands. The game will call the bands, and the event will play the sounds that you defined. They play on the buses that you also defined. But there are two things we haven't done yet. It is this level state. I created this state, the game doesn't come with it, and I use this value to choose music, but I do not set the value to these values anywhere. Same with the boss face, I made this up to. It doesn't come with the original game. The only place I set anything like that is on this single event where I set the level to none, but I don't set the level to outpost, I don't set it to minor, I don't set the boss face anywhere. So on the next video I'm gonna use a hex editor to set the states on other banks than the ones I reverse engineered, because this is music displays everywhere. I can't know if we are on the outpost level, if we are on the biotics level by using these songs. So I will pick sound banks that have sounds from those levels and add this set state line to those sounds so that the level is set to the correct place and so that the correct audio can be played. So that would be it. Until the next video.